For eons, our people's imagination has been captured by the lights above our planet. Finally, our technology has caught up with our dreams and we have begun to explore space. However, a strange crevice recently opened up beneath our capital city. It appears an ancient city lies below. We began exploring, discovering signs of our own people as they seemed to be digging upwards. Eventually, at the bottom of the pit, we found a strange sphere, and inside, writings in a long-lost dialect of our own language. Our scientists have theorized that our people are not native to this planet, and this ship seems to all but confirm it. For the next several decades, we attempted to reverse engineer the technology of the sphere. We have repaired the sphere enough to use it as a ship to travel into the rift from where it came. We attached a tether made of our strongest fibers and launched our greatest minds into the rift. The scene before our scientists was apocalyptic. A bare and pockmarked planet surrounded by vast debris fields occupied their sensors. As they entered the atmosphere, they intercepted radio transmissions in the language discovered in the ancient documents. These must be our ancestors. They talked of invaders attacking their planet and mounting a defense. However, the situation was looking more and more hopeless. As they approached, they encountered two distinct population centers. One identified as the Starlight Vanguard, a group of determined militarists set on defending the planet against the coming onslaught, and the others, the Black Curtain, a priestly order promising spiritual sanctuary from the coming threat. We decided to communicate with the Starlight Vanguard and revealed our presence to them, and quickly convinced them of our common ancestry, by which they told us how 50 years ago the rift had miraculously appeared, and so in a last-ditch effort they had constructed the sphere and sent it along with many of their people inside. In those 50 years, eons passed for us. The Vanguard then asked for assistance in their fight as extra-dimensional invaders were closing in, and so we sent them several hundred alloys to repair their fleets. After this, they held an emergency world meeting and praised us for our contribution, but also asked for astral threads to help augment their shields, to which we obliged. In one fateful battle, the ancestral fleets were obliterated, and now their people flee with us through the rift. Many nobles have bribed us. Others have offered to give us libraries of ancient knowledge. However, in the end, we chose to take as many of their people back with us as we could, and fled through the rift. And so, with the support of our ancestors, we received a boon in armor, weapons, and sublight power, and we stand on the shoulders of their sacrifice. By this point, we had greatly expanded our empire, and had colonized 2 more planets. However, we discovered that we are not alone in the galaxy and made contact with a filthy criminal syndicate empire who promptly and without permission began setting up smuggling ports on our worlds. In the meantime, we began collecting astral threads from the rift that had formed outside our homeworld and have realized we can compile the threads in a single place in space to create a second rift. However, we must be careful not to make too many rifts too close together, or we may risk unraveling all space and time. And so, after several years had passed, we opened our second rift and traveled inside. It was at this point that we began to discover several more uses and insights for astral threads, including siphons, catapults, and engine upgrades. Strangely enough, we received some sort of transmission. Somebody out there is watching us. Crime began to worsen on our planets, and so we declared war on the criminal syndicate in order to cast off their ports from our worlds. The war ended in a stalemate where we agreed to compensate them for every branch office they dissembled from our worlds. Soon after making contact with a new empire at the galactic north end of our space, our bordering starbase exploded. In the last few moments before the feed from the system went dark, we received images of a hostile armada approaching. They identified themselves as the Vertrician Foundation. We immediately began setting up a forward command base with defense platforms to hopefully stop the invaders until we can muster a fleet. We managed to hold them off and then push them back to a better chokehold in their space, although after regrouping, their fleets are more powerful than ours, and so we are attempting to hold the border and build up defenses. Then, just as their much larger fleet was coming to attack us, we recaptured the last planet they had taken within our space. With that final border adjustment, we sued for peace, and their already war-exhausted government called off the attack. They didn't realize how weak we had become, and they accepted the treaty. With the treaty firmly in place, we began overhauling all border defenses and begun initiatives to colonize new space and terraform more planets. Our species was entering our golden age, and we knew it. One day, a rift sphere appeared in our system. It is made of some strange crystal material and is eerily close to our home planet, and so we decided to study it. We began using our astral threads to experiment with the sphere in hopes of uncovering its secrets faster. The sphere was encoded with instructions, and by following them using complex gases and more threads, we recreated the conditions prescribed. Instantly, the sphere vanished, and in its place, a new rift formed. This one is crystalline in structure and leads somewhere unknown. After sending in one of our rift spheres, we received no transmissions from our scientists. Then, upon further scrutiny, we were in fact receiving data. However, the flow of time seems to be much slower on the other side, and so we were only receiving about 1 word per day in the transmission. We then EMP'd the anchor cord in an effort to reset our systems and whatever was affecting our ship. The EMP worked and the ship resumed normal function. However, our crew have no memory of the event. A gaseous entity seems to be incapacitated nearby. The creature slowly began to recover and began bombarding the sphere with signals and communications. Our computers are overloading and it seems we aren't welcome here. With the extra AI assistance, we were able to process the massive amounts of data streaming to us. We realized the data was not an attack, but instead a story with complex images in a clear sequence. The data seemed to be a projection of our galaxy, but inside was a smaller, denser galaxy with rifts linking them together. We then realized this was a map, and whoever had sent this was showing us where to go. There was so much data being blasted at us that we had to choose what to preserve, and so we kept the particle data. More images were sent our way. It seemed to be a story of a foreign homeworld, and beings formed millennia ago. Cities rose and fell, and by the end, a civilization of higher beings existed. They called themselves the Formless. They are creatures of pure energy, and their physiology and technology is beyond comprehension. More data flooded our systems, and we chose to preserve the physics information. The images became even clearer, and we could make out individuals living in what seemed to be a perfect utopia. Soon, a great structure was raised into the sky. It met the rift in the sky, allowing them to easily travel between different dimensions. The beings shaped many dimensions to fit their needs. Their society stretched universes. However, they soon overstretched their astral conduit until eventually it ripped asunder, fracturing their empire into countless pieces. Specific words now appeared: shattered kin, war, help us. Then our sphere was forcibly ejected from the rift, and a new portal opened in the system. We've decided we need to wait until our technology and our fleets are ready to explore it. Telemetry from our scans indicate the wormhole leads to the center of the galaxy. Whatever is there, we must ready ourselves to face it. Fortunately, we also gained the ability to summon dimensional fleets, now at a cost of almost 2,000 astral threads. The summoned fleet matches our total current fleet size and lasts for about 10 years. This incredibly enhanced our ability to defend ourselves and our overall galactic influence. All of a sudden, we received a strange transmission from a species calling themselves the Chosen. They claimed to be superior to all other species, a ridiculous claim considering our own inward perfection. Rather suddenly, we also received communication from a species that referred to themselves as the Ketlings, and seemed to be the distant relatives of a previous fallen empire, who had once lived in their space. They seem somewhat reasonable, and although they are inferior, they offer some benefit to us. They wish to form a protection agreement in exchange for some payment, of course. The Vertrician Foundation declared war on us again. However, as we had been strengthening our border, they were no match for our new defenses. After repelling the first invasion with minimal losses, we began rebuilding our defense stations and claiming some of their planets and stations. We also began optimizing our trade routes, setting our fleets on watch to guard against piracy. Eventually, the war ended in a stalemate, and we sent our astral fleets to clear out pockets of amoebas, crystalline entities, and finally, the Dreadnought. We finalized a subjugation agreement to protect the Ketlings, but not interfere with their government, at a 25% base tax on all their production. They seem to be a very hardworking species, and are already contributing a large amount of resources to our empire. Then we received a transmission from an individual who called herself Vas the Gilded. She appeared to be a very skilled diplomat and wished to join our empire. She agrees with our pacifistic lifestyle and wishes further galactic peace. We decided to accept her and assigned her as our spokesperson on the Galactic Council. Immediately, our diplomatic weight quadrupled. It seems her skills were not exaggerated. With our fleets larger than ever, we prepare to enter the wormhole. We sent a science ship through, which then confirmed our suspicion of its location at the center of the galaxy. Immediately, we received a communique from these strange beings, which seemed to be made of pure energy. They called us food and talked to someone they called Shadogan. We turned on all of our attack edicts and summoned our dimensional fleet. We charged into the portal and we were met with several other dimensional fleets, which we destroyed with ease. Once destroyed, we received a transmission from a structure orbiting a planet in the system. They too were beings of energy, and they told us that more were coming, and we must seal the rift. These must be the beings who sent us the strange sphere and called us here. We began using astral threads to help the creatures who called themselves the Formless. We also began using astral threads to seal the rift. Before long, another hostile fleet entered into the system through the rift and began attacking us. We held them off without too many losses. However, to help aid our defense, we began constructing a starbase in the system. Eventually, one final fleet of over 100,000 fleet power came through. We prevailed against it. As the rift disappeared, Zadagul, the Formless fleet commander, opened a transmission to us and told us it was finished, and that never again would their children find this place. After inquiring as to who the Formless were and why they were here, they replied, saying they traveled through the rift to flee from their children who seek the throne. They then told us this throne was their eternity and their memories. It was the heart of their species. Because of us, it was now safe. We decided that we would work together with them, and so Zadagul joined our ranks and became one of our strongest military commanders. We soon sent a colony ship to the system to colonize a massive size 40 Gaia world. With the development of jump drives, we turned our sights to those beings who called themselves the Chosen. They had declared they would cleanse the galaxy, however nothing ever came of them. We eventually discovered the signal had originated from an offshoot of systems outside the galaxy, connected by a single wormhole, which had been locked using astral threads by our enemies to the north. Now that we had developed jump drives, we decided to jump our fleets into their systems and remove this threat. The fighting was bitter. Each system was greatly reinforced and defended. Again, we were victorious. After several years of bombing, we began invading their worlds, and eventually took all of them, and our own people inhabited their planets. Each of their systems had habitats, and their 3 planets in their core sector were very wealthy. This sector became the most powerful district in our empire. We built several gateways as well, so that we could easily travel between the offshoot and our own space. We began expanding to fill the gaps in the galaxy map, inhabiting dozens of worlds. We also greatly increased our military might and political power, establishing ourselves on the Galactic Council. Eventually, we nominated ourselves as Galactic Custodian, and with the help of our diplomat, Vast the Gilded, we easily garnered a majority vote, and we were elected as Custodian. We immediately voted to end the time limit for the Custodianship, making the position permanent, to which no empire objected. We began pushing our own objectives, increasing the size of the Custodian's fleet. With the dawn of our golden era, we began the construction of a quantum catapult. This device should help us maintain peace in the entire galaxy. Upon its completion, we began detecting a massive power surge building up in the galaxy. Eventually, the surge concluded in the arrival of a familiar entity, the Unbidden, the long-lost descendants of the Formless. Their portal opened up on the other side of the galaxy and the Hesekirian regime. Using astral threads, we increased the speed and accuracy of our quantum catapult, and prepared to catapult our ships to Hesekirian space and repel the invasion. Unfortunately, the accuracy of the quantum catapult is still not perfect, and so our launched ships landed near the Unbidden but not on them. We enforced a blockade on the border of the newly acquired Unbidden space. We then received a transmission from the Unbidden. They asked Zadagul how he was here, fighting with us, and they told him he would be a great feast, and we should come and break against their might. With this, they attacked, sending a fleet of over 2 million power at us. We turned on all of our special battle edicts, and the battle began. The fighting was fierce, but we managed to force them to retreat, and so we began charging towards the rift, hoping to close it. We managed to destroy several of their star bases. However, upon reaching the portal, we discovered they had already set up several dimensional anchors in other systems. These anchors would have to independently be destroyed before the portal would collapse, and unfortunately, these anchors were being actively guarded by the majority of their fleets. In order to get at them, we would have to travel through another wormhole and punch through 5 of their strongest fleets to even have a shot. Without any recourses, we issued the evac order and pulled our fleets out of their space. We approached the Formless about the situation and were able to extract some useful information about how the Unbidden were a shame to the Formless. Above all else, they seeked the throne and were an example of their greed amplified. With the help of the Formless and a couple thousand astral threads, we were able to identify a weakness in their shielding, giving us a bonus to damage against them. We also inquired to our mercenary enclave about any tactical information they had acquired and received a similar bonus. We began attacking their positions. Our intel showed they only had 5 anchors, and so we renewed our offensive. Our losses quickly began to pile up, and although we were winning every battle, the Unbidden weren't losing. With every battle, they would merely emergency FTL jump away and would lose very few ships, whilst we were losing more and more with each confrontation. We had almost taken the first anchor when we realized all hope was lost. The Unbidden surprise attacked us with a fleet double in strength to what they normally possessed, and a second fleet reinforcing it. We were winning at first, but more and more ships were lost until it was clear the tide had changed. We then initiated an emergency jump and left the system. Our losses were extremely heavy. Millions of personnel dead and 3/4 of our navy gone. We could no longer guarantee the protection of our own space. We had lost. Immediately, the Unbidden fleets seized their chance at our weakness and pushed towards our border. Without any hope, we did something shameful, cowardly, and greedy. We attacked the Formless. We must have the Eternal Throne. Whatever power it has, we believed it would be the only way to guarantee our future and win the war. Upon hearing of our plans, Zadigal left us and rejoined his fellow Formless and headed up their defensive fleets. However, even badly damaged, the Formless were no match for us, and we destroyed their ships. We hoped we could take the throne peacefully, but each Formless defended it with their lives, and in the end, they all perished. We finally approached the throne and witnessed its immense and powerful properties. It would grant any who touched it immortality. It also produced a great quantity of astral threads on its own. However, it could not change the tide of the war. Realizing we could not win, we formulated a new plan. The throne, although not our salvation, had changed things. We now were no longer victims to the ravages of time, and so if we could somehow protect ourselves long enough, we could advance our technology far enough and be able to beat the Unbidden. We realized we had the perfect place available, and it could house at least 1/3 of our population. This, of course, was the old chosen star systems. There was only one entrance into that area of space, through a wormhole, and with the use of astral threads, we could lock that wormhole indefinitely, ensuring the survival of our species. During this time, the Unbidden began taking our systems and planets on the frontier, although the bulk of our empire was still safe. We soon began upgrading the habitats in those systems. We also invaded a Gaia world filled with primitives, which was similarly separated from the galaxy, but could be linked through gateways to our pocket galaxy, increasing our capacity. We began maximizing housing on the planets in the systems, while also changing and balancing the production of that sector, so that once the rest of the galaxy was gone, our pocket could be self-sufficient. And with the throne, none of us would die. Yes, it might be a long wait, but with immortality, nothing is truly long compared to infinity. And slowly but surely, we began rebuilding our fleets. The project was set into motion, and we began the mass migration of our population at random to the chosen worlds. Of course, we kept our true plan under wraps. We couldn't have the general population find out most of them were going to die. Likewise, at the rate the Unbidden were progressing, it would be a century at least till the galaxy was overwhelmed. Although our downfall was inevitable, we knew a remnant would survive and maybe one day could retake the galaxy. Other factions of the Unbidden attacked,
They called themselves the Vehement and the Aberrant. They fought each other for a time, giving us a reprieve from the onslaught. However, the Unbidden were too solidified in this galaxy and destroyed their portals and wiped out their fleets. A fallen empire awoke, attempting to lead the charge against this threat. However, they too were no match for the power of the Unbidden. As the rest of the galaxy fell around us, we declared the Galactic Imperium, hoping to bring some order to the galaxy and hold back the Unbidden for as long as possible. We attempted to create other pockets of safety by exploring a cluster of systems outside our galaxy known as the L Cluster. However, our scientists informed us it was only possible to maintain one locked wormhole at a time. We sent our entire rebuilt armada to the cluster and attempted to hold it. We promised our allies safe haven in it if they helped us. The Unbidden immediately detected our presence and attacked. They sent everything they had at us, and although we held them back, they just kept coming. We fought for months, and we attempted to reinforce our fleets best we could, but in the end, our defeat was inevitable. And when the realization came that there was nowhere to go, our fleets fell apart. Billions died defending a lost hope, our allies destroyed. The Unbidden grew and grew, and empire after empire fell. The Tianqi were even destroyed. We took in refugees from many, but in the end, we had to close our borders. With our navy in tatters, our home systems began to fall. One by one, those left behind were bombed and eaten, and those lucky enough to be chosen watched in horror as the decades passed. Soon, the galaxy grew quiet. The last few safe worlds were discovered and destroyed. Our civilization fell into myth. Many tried to find us, but in the end, that myth died with the Azantian Mandate's last world on November 23rd, 2586. In silent immortality, our people waited. For over 200 years, the Unbidden ruled the empty galaxy, feasting on planets and filling the voids of space. Our scientists worked tirelessly, researching better weapons, shields, and armor. Their immortality sped up the process, as no one new had to be trained up. Eventually, we emerged from our seclusion and tested the waters. We sent a single fleet, deemed to be 800,000 fleet power, against an unbidden fleet of 2.1 million. We completely devastated their fleet, and none of their ships escaped. We suffered 0 casualties as well. A battle plan was laid out, and our armada was mobilized. We had about 17 total fleets, equal or greater to the expeditionary fleet, which we then sent out all at once in a surprise attack. Each fleet targeted one of the 12 dimensional anchors, with the remaining fleets heading straight for the interdimensional portal. The goal was to cut off their reinforcements before they could react. Anchor after anchor was besieged. Just as swiftly as they had arrived, the unbidden anchors and finally the portal were destroyed. Hope, it seemed, had at last prevailed. However, was the cost too high? Once the portal was closed, we sent our fleets to the L Cluster to hold terminal egress. It was the main transportation network the Unbidden used through the L gates, and so holding it would serve to cut off their ability to transport their fleets. Upon taking the system, fleet after fleet of Unbidden ships began pouring through the gates. This battle became the largest in known history and lasted more than a month until eventually the few remaining Unbidden fleets retreated. Over the next 30-odd years, we dismantled and destroyed the last remaining bastions of unbidden defenses in the galaxy. And we looked upon a peaceful and empty space. For nigh on a century, we did nothing. The galaxy, devoid of purpose and life, served as a reflection of ourselves. For the price we paid for this freedom, this emptiness had been the reason it had started in the first place. Our greed. Eventually, however, an idea spread like a benevolent disease, until we acted with purpose and design. We sent ships into the emptiness laden with people of every kind and nature who had survived the onslaught. We gave them the freedom to define themselves, to build empires from the ashes of the galaxy. They inhabited broken rings, ruined ecumenopoli, fractured habitats, and bombed worlds. For 200 years, they grew and developed. the galaxy became filled with life once more. Meanwhile, we cut ourselves off from the rest of the galaxy. We closed the wormhole into our space, silently watching our children rebuild. Unfortunately, it seems time erases all, even the greatest of lessons. And soon these children became enthralled with wealth and greed, and declared war on each other. Then, in the darkness, hope was born. A new civilization emerged, unseated by us. They, it seemed, had just discovered the wonders of FTL travel. They were so ignorant of the time before, untainted by the horrors of the past. But just as quickly as they flamed into existence, they were snuffed out by an empire we created, who supposedly owned the system they had called home. Our greed had killed them. Maybe not by our own hands, but the greed of our nature. It seems we will never change. We are no better than the unbidden. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing and leave a like if you want me to continue playing in this galaxy.